Hello, this is Daniel Vermillion with week 5, and today we are talking about data types. And what I'm going to talk about is the process in which the primitive collections and objects data types can be used in business. So the way that I look at that is the data types. I think you're perfectly described is in like the lecture this week, talking about how when you're looking at data, you're not just looking at one specific thing. You're talking about like the forest as like the object, and then the trees make up the forest, and the branches and the leaves make up the tree. So it's kind of this cascading effect of different levels of data that you're looking at. So for each part of the primitive data, then the collections and the objects, they build upon each other. They're not separate from each other. They're kind of intertwined. If each thing is part of another. For kind of my daytime job, I work with healthcare software, and I work with a lot of patient information. So one thing that we use is we store a lot of the data, and we want to look at it different ways. So the way that we can use primitive data, we can look at like at a patient's admission time, and this is very important for a hospital or an organization that as you know, you may want to know when time the patient's admitted or how many patients were admitted that day. You can use that data multiple different ways. So the admission entry would be stored. So the admission entry would store the data time for that patient. That can be like our primitive data, like our just most basic would be just that time. And then, secondly, building upon that, you may want the list of all the patients for, say, like the emergency room or a certain department that day. So you can do like patient like 0 in quotes in the collection list for all the patients. So you can list all those patients that would hit that day that they were admitted. So that admission time for that little bit of data could flow into that patient list that you're identifying potentially for like an entire day, or I mean even an entire year, but it grows upon it. And lastly, you can have the objects. And for the same example that I'm going off of, you have the admission time, you have the patients for a certain department, and then we may want to look at the patients for the entire hospital or an entire organization that spans multiple hospitals across the U.S. You can sort those by like patient.list of hospital, and then you list that hospital and list all the patients that are admitted during a certain time frame, certain day. And what you're doing is building upon that. You take the admission time, which gives you that patient list, which gives you that list for the entire hospital. So these data sets for these data types, for these entries build upon each other. Is you have the most basic piece of the admission time, and then the patient list, and then all the patients. But even farther down, you can change up that primitive data type. You don't have to use admission time. You can use type of medication or a doctor that the patient is under, or the list of patients a doctor has. You can kind of shake up what you're looking at. But like I said, the way that I view a lot of these and how they're used in business is that there's a growing fact, just like the example, is that the forest isn't the forest. The forest is a collection of trees, which is a collection of branches, in the same way that the patients in the hospital are patients of different departments, and they're admitted at different dates, and they may have different doctors and medications or discharge times, but they're all growing upon each other. So in my line of work, I use a lot of this as organizing different tables that I can look at these admission times, or look at these patient times, or look at specific data for them. So I use them a lot as tables to view information, which then can help provide answers for different things, like how many patients were admitted at a certain time. Is there a trending of data of patients that have similar diagnoses or similar medications? So all this data that is put in is then manipulated in different ways. But as for today, I'll just stick with the different data types that we have. And yeah, that's kind of my 3 examples. Let me know what you think. And yeah, love having a discussion with you guys. Thanks.